Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I'm proud to present AJR 37 today, which urges Congress to pass HR 2737 and S 1555. Those items direct Congress to award a Congressional Gold Medal to the Filipino veterans of World War II in recognition of their loyal and courageous service to the United States and the Philippines during World War II. The Filipino veterans of World War II, sadly, have become a symbol of injustice for Filipinos in the United States and in the Philippines. During World War II, more than 200,000 Filipinos and Filipino Americans were called into action and promised full benefits, including citizenship, for their committed service. However, the veterans never received the benefits they were promised. Rather than being honored for the roles they played, Philippine military personnel were rendered ineligible for benefits or public recognition when President Truman signed the Rescission Acts of 1946. Since the American Revolution, Congress has commissioned the Congressional Gold Medal as its highest expression of national appreciation for distinguished achievements and contributions. The Filipino veterans of World War II deserve appropriate recognition for their heroic military efforts. So please join me in urging Congress to do what is just and pass HR 2737 and S 1555. I respectfully ask that the first roll be open for co-authors, and at the appropriate time, respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Bonta. Mr. Jones, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in support of AJR 37. As I've shared a couple of times on this floor, my grandfather was in the U.S. Air Corps in World War II, serving in the South Pacific alongside with many Filipino service people, and was shot down in his B-24 and served for 18 months in a Japanese POW camp, along with some of these with his Filipino colleagues. And they fought beside him. They served in camps beside him, and they came home to America and served beside him as well, and have added a great amount of honor to our culture here in America, and especially in the San Diego County area where we have a large Filipino veteran community. And this is a great bill, and ask that we all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All discussion having ceased on the resolution, Mr. Bonta is asking that the first roll be open for co-authors. The clerk will open the roll. All members wishing to add as co-authors on the resolution. This is for co-authors, members. This is for co-authors. The clerk will close the roll. There are 71 co-authors added, and AJR requires a roll call vote. Members, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who wish to vote. All members vote who wish to vote on the resolution. All members vote who wish to vote. All members vote who wish to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Ayes 69, no 0. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Bonta, you are recognized for your guest introduction relative to this AJR.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. I'm delighted that with us today in the gallery are community advocates and families of Filipino World War II veterans who've come to show their support for this measure, and very honored and thrilled that among the community advocates is my biggest advocate, my mother, Cynthia, who is here as well to show support. Please join me in providing them a warm welcome.
Members in file order, file item 34, pass and retain. File item 35 is H.R. 54 by Dr. Eggman. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 54 by Assemblymember Eggman and others, relative to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender LGBT Pride Month.
Dr. Eggman, members, please give your attention to Dr. Eggman. You may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Today I rise and present House Resolution 54, which declares June as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month. While we're not able to have our ceremony till later this year, we didn't want June to go by without being able to recognize that around the world, June is celebrated as Pride Month, the month that we recognize our collective journey towards dignity, understanding, and mutual respect for all, while recognizing, members, that we still have a long way to go. This month, we started Pride some 47 years ago to say enough is enough and we shouldn't have to hide. That was a month that we began to encourage people to come out and to be who they are. We are your sisters, your mothers, your daughters, your fathers, your husbands, your co-workers, your teammates, your church members, your employees, your elected official. Indeed, we represent all aspects, especially in this great state of California. We also recognize the great progress we have made, both in overturning things like DOMA, the Supreme Court, but we also recognize, especially in the face of what happened this month in Orlando, that we still have a very long way to go. So I ask for the first row to be open for co-authors and that we recognize June as LGBT Pride Month in California.
Thank you, Dr. Eggman. Mr. Levine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. On behalf of the Jewish Caucus, I rise in support of H.R. 54 to celebrate LGBT Pride Month. The LGBT community and the Jewish community have a very special connection, one certainly that I felt marching in the Pride Parade in San Francisco yesterday, but also historically and unfortunately both as victims of the Nazis and of incredible violence and hate crimes throughout our history. This month, as our communities come together to celebrate Pride and to celebrate our history, LGBT Jews have broken barriers and been tremendously successful in all walks of life. And politically, we all know Harvey Milk, who led the fight for equality when that fight was in its infancy. Barney Frank, the first openly gay member of Congress. Jerome Robbins and Michael Bennett, who blazed a trail on Broadway. Or Jason Klein, the first openly gay rabbi. Members of who have shaped Americana and our culture: Gertrude Stein, Alice Toklas, Allen Ginsberg, Brian Epstein, Isaac Mizrahi, Aaron Copeland, and so many other LGBT Jews that have really made an impact on us. And I know that for my constituents in Marin, very fortunately to be represented by two Jewish members of the legislature in the past, Senators Mark Leno and Carol Mignon. I ask you to support H.R. 54.
Thank you, Ms. Levine. Ms. Garcia, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Today is about Pride, and I am proud to rise as the Women's Caucus Vice Chair and applaud the work of the LGBT Californians in H.R. 35. The Pride that we celebrate today is a colorful history in the state. While we have led the nation in some LGBT struggles, we have fought tirelessly to catch up on other issues of significance. But it is important that we always come together with mutual respect so that California's children learn that we must appreciate our differences and respect one another and recognize our common experiences. The LGBT movement was pioneered originally mainly by men, but women and transgender people have elevated this human right fight and empowered it to what it is today. Women like Ellen DeGeneres, Jane Lynch, U.S. Senator Tommy Baldwin, Martina Navratilova, and Caitlyn Jenner each present a picture in the collage of life. And as this movement continues, I ask that we also focus on righting the wrongs done to transgender women. On this road, we unite on issues relating to violence against women. Let's stay this path and continue to bring justice to all women. We have many LGBT leaders to applaud today, but many role models fight alongside us in this chamber every day. I applaud the work of my LGBT colleagues today, LGBT heroes every day, and the work of all Pride Award, the work of all individuals out there. Thank you. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. All discussion having ceased on the resolution, Dr. Eggman is asking that the first roll be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors on the House resolution. This is for co-authors adding on to H.R. 54. Clerk will close the roll. There are 51 co-authors added. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the House resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. File item 36, pass and retain. Members, file item 37 is H.R. 55. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 55 by Assemblymember Thurmond and others relative to Juneteenth Day celebrations.
Dr. Weber, you may open on the resolution.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, I rise today to present to you H.R. 55 on behalf of my colleague from Richmond. It is a resolution recognizing Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the oldest known African-American celebration commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. That proclamation effectively ended slavery as a state-sponsored practice. This declaration, however, fell on deaf ears in many of the southern states, including Texas. It is estimated that in 1865, some 30% of the Texas population was still slaves. On June 19, 1865, Major General Gordon Granger led a company of Northern soldiers into Galveston, Texas, and declared, quote, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves." Slavery was ended in Texas, and Juneteenth was born. Juneteenth is a celebration or a combination of the word June and the 19th began as a holiday celebrating the end of slavery. Despite this celebration that began in 1865 in Galveston, Texas, it really did not reach national prominence until the 1990s, when many Texans moved from Texas to various parts of the United States and carried with them the tradition of Juneteenth. And now thousands of African Americans and other Americans across the nation celebrate with various cultural displays and activities. Juneteenth affords us the opportunity to reflect on the long road to freedom for African Americans beginning with the end of slavery. Juneteenth also affords us an opportunity to think about how far we still have to go, what other rights have been delayed, and what other promises have we as a state failed to see. With permission, I'd like to read the declaration from the President of the United States, Barack Obama, on Juneteenth 19, 2016, and he states, "Just outside the Oval Office hangs a painting depicting the night of December 31st, 1862. In it, African-American men, women, and children crowd around a single pocket watch, waiting for the clock to strike midnight and the Emancipation Proclamation to take effect. As the slaves huddled anxiously in the dimly lit room, we can sense how even 2 more minutes seem like an eternity to wait for one's freedom. But the slaves of Galveston, Texas had to wait more than 2 years after Lincoln's decree and 2 months after Appomattox to receive word that they were free at last." He says, "Today we commemorate the anniversary of that delayed but welcome news. Decades of collective action would follow as equality and justice for African Americans advance slowly, frustratingly, gradually on our nation's journey toward a more perfect union. On this Juneteenth, we remember that struggle as we reflect on how far we've come as a country. The slaves of Galveston knew freedom was only a few steps, just as the bloody foots of soldiers who crossed the Pettus Bridge 100 years later knew they had to keep marching. Juneteenth is a time to recommit ourselves to the work that remains undone. We remember that even in the darkest hours, there is cause to hope for tomorrow's light. Today, no matter how our race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation, we commit ourselves to working to free modern-day slaves around the world and to honoring in our own times the efforts of those who fought so hard to steer our country truer to our higher ideals. Members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote on behalf of my colleague for H.R. 55, commemorating the Juneteenth celebration, and ask for the first roll to be open for co-authors.
Thank you, Dr. Weber. Mr. Rodriguez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Colleagues, on behalf of the Legislative Latino Caucus, I rise in support of this important measure authored by my esteemed colleague from Richmond. In the 20th century, as African Americans migrated from the South to the North and the West Coast, they brought the Juneteenth tradition with them. As the civil rights movement flourished during the 1950s and 60s, interest in the Juneteenth was revived, and the occasion was celebrated in parts of the country that never celebrated it before. The Latino Caucus stands in solidarity with our colleagues in the Black Caucus in helping move towards a more just and equal society for all Americans. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in rising in support of H.R. 55 to celebrate Juneteenth.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Chavez, you are recognized.
As a member of the Republican Party and the Party of Lincoln, I also stand and recognize this important day. Think about it. This time was actually the founding of the Republican Party. The recognizing that everybody had value and that we were willing to bleed for that ideals. This is a very important issue. I'm sure all Republicans are going to vote for this. I'm sure all the parties are going to vote for, floor is going to vote for this, because they should, because as societies go through and develop, there are certain key points within that society that dictate the future in a dramatic way. The Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation were those events that changed our country. I dare say that changed our entire world as we look at race. I strongly support this proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Chavez. All discussion having ceased on the resolution, Dr. Weber is asking that the first roll be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. Members, this is for co-authors. Co-authors on the resolution. It's for co-authors, members. Clerk will close the roll. There are 68 co-authors added. Without objection, we may take a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Moving to Senate third reading, file items 38 and 39, pass and retain. File item 40, SB 49. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 49 by Senator Runner, enacting to elections, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Wilk, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to present SB 49 on behalf of Senator Runner. SB 49 clarifies the election process for the rare occasion when there is only one qualified candidate running in a special election to fill a seat in the legislature. SB 49 allows the governor to cancel a special election and declare the single candidate elected. Elections are expensive, and these clarifications will result in a cost savings for counties in the rare occurrence of a special election with only one qualified candidate. SB 49 is supported by the California State Association of Counties and the California Clerks and Election Officials, and it has received bipartisan support. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote. Desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 67, noes 4 on the urgency. Ayes 67, noes 4 on the measure. The measure passes. File item 41, SB 775. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 775 by Senator Allen, enacting a tenancy.
Mr. Bloom, you may open.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 775 stops a small group of sophisticated landlords and tenants from forcing a city to certify the rent when city officials don't have the necessary facts before them to make that determination. The law should not require a government entity to certify something it cannot know to be true, and so SB 775 ensures that landlords and tenants will only have the permissible rent level of a given unit set by a hearing examiner in a neutral setting after both parties have had the opportunity to argue their case. This bill has no opposition and has received broad bipartisan support in both houses. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Seeing no discussion or debate on the item, clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote, desire to vote. The clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 71, no 0. Measure passes. File item 42, pass and retain. File item 43, SJR 15. Clerk will read.
Senate Joint Resolution 15 by Senator Glazer and others relative to the Confederate States of America.
Ms. Gonzalez, you may open on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. SJR 15 calls on Congress to prohibit all public schools, buildings, parks, roadways, and other federally owned property from using names of elected or military leaders of the Confederate States of America. There is no way to separate the Confederacy from the defense of slavery. And it's past time that we as a country show that we do not tolerate, celebrate, or welcome displays of oppression, hatred, and bigotry in publicly funded spaces. All federal public properties named in honor of Confederate leaders should be changed to something in line with our values as a nation. Surely the federal government can find more worthy individuals that have truly helped America become the great nation it is. We've worked for a year in my district on renaming a school that was historically named after Robert E. Lee. It was a difficult and lengthy process. We finally got that done after a year of hearings. And I know that it's meaningful to the children, 97% of whom are kids of color who attend that school currently, who now can at least go to a school that doesn't bear the name and the honor of somebody whose the biggest thing that they were known for in life was defending the enslavement of these kids' ancestors. I think if it can be done in a small school in South San Diego County, it should be done nationally, and Congress should have the will to do it. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Burke, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As Vice Chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, I rise in strong support of SJR 15. As evident in what happened here today at the yesterday at the Capitol, our nation is in dire need of a real conversation regarding race and how we move forward together. The part of our history we choose to celebrate and enshrine on federal property must be part of that conversation. Using the names of Confederate leaders on federally owned property simply elevates a part of history rooted in division and enslavement of African American people. We have a choice in aligning our legacy with the core values as a nation, and this is another way to reach that goal. I respectfully request your aye vote on SJR 15.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. Mr. Chavez, you are recognized.
I rise in opposition of this resolution. Well, I recognize that our history has been colored by a number of people who probably did not hold our values that we have today in 2016. It's also important to recognize that this country was made up with heartache and blood in defining who we are. Robert E. Lee, though he was the leading general of the Confederate Army, or there in the Army of Virginia, was also the first gentleman that actually Lincoln went to run the Union Army. At the end of the Civil War, Robert E. Lee went on to run the University of Virginia and help a number of people become educated. Robert E. Lee was a leader within Virginia and many things beyond that have to do with the Confederates. As a lot of us know, we look at the Civil War as something that was strictly between the issue of slavery, which was a major component of it, but it also was a major component of the understanding of states' rights. When you look at how this country was established in the 1700s, it was the idea that we states were going to come together to have one union. And that was a hard thing. And it was believed that the states had a chance to separate. That's what it was about, the war between the states. It was slavery was a problem, but there's also the issue of the states' right. There's also an issue with how we were going to see ourselves with Europe. That's why you had France and England play two different roles. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a number of people in our history who have done terrible things. Custer, wiping out Native Americans. But he was a Union soldier, and he's recognized also in a number of sites throughout this country. If we start purging our history, the lessons that can be learned by our youth on what was good and bad by everyone are going to be lost. We cannot re-engineer history. We just have to understand what history is. Think about it. I was a gentleman just talking a minute ago about why we needed to recognize Juneteenth and why the Republican Party took that position. I'm also the guy standing up saying we cannot re-engineer history because that is our history. And many times you learn not just from the good things you've done, but the things we're ashamed about. That's why it's important in the issue of the Armenians to understand what genocide is. We need to understand that history. It's a terrible thing. We learn not to do terrible things in the future by understanding the terrible things we've done in the past. We should not purge our history of people who were there, who actually defined this country.
Mr. Williams, you are recognized.
On behalf of the API caucus, I rise in support of this resolution. Members, there is a difference between remembering history and honoring someone with a name on a school or on a public place. While I believe we should remember the Civil War by continuing to honor Confederate leaders who fought against our country to defend the institution of slavery, we perpetuate a long flirtation in this nation with a selective, I would say abjectly false nostalgia with the seditionists who fought against this nation and the ideals it stands for. We should not view them as heroes, and I think that this takes a step to increasing the dialogue that furthers the conversation about racial tolerance and encourages us to think critically about the effect that celebrating these names can have on people using these spaces. I ask for an aye vote.
All discussion having ceased on the item, Ms. Gonzalez, you may close.
You know, I've spent the last year with a lot of the same discussions that were happening by my colleague from Oceanside. And this is what I have to say. There is nothing about purging history in this. It is about the fact that we should have pride when we name things. We don't sit here and think of highways to name after historical figures, whether they did good or bad. We don't think that it's onerous to name things after historical figures that did something negative. And although our values may have changed, there were plenty of people in the 1860s who held the value that slavery should not exist. That's why there was a war. And we can sit here and reconstruct history and say this was about states' rights. Yes, it was about states' rights to own people. The state's right to own individuals in this society whose ancestors live here today. I took up this fight because of my daughter. When we talked about Robert E. Lee, and I thought elementary school, and I thought this isn't even something like, why am I getting involved with this? Because this is what we kept hearing. She reminded me, Mom, he's famous because he didn't take the Union Army. He decided to fight against our country, against the Union, in order that my ancestors, as my daughter would say, my ancestors in the South who were slaves in Alabama would remain that way, and I would not be here today if he were successful. That is not somebody we should be honoring from our government's point of view. Our children deserve more, our community deserves more, and it'll never be written in our history books, and we should always know what our history is, absolutely, so we don't shame ourselves by repeating it. But we have so many fabulous, fantastic, wonderful, inclusive Americans that we could be naming public highways and schools and facilities after. And that's what we should be doing. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Gonzalez, would you like co-authors? First roll will be open for co-authors. Members, clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors on the SJR. This is for co-authors, adding on to the Senate joint resolution. Clerk will close the roll. There are 50 co-authors added, and SJR requires a roll call vote. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote or desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote.